Now, data from Smile ID shows that 4% of emergent biometric fraud techniques in the year 2024 were driven by AI-powered selfie anomalies. Now, in a breakdown of the report, East Africa led in document fraud cases with a 27% rejection rate in the year under review. West Africa had the highest incidence of biometric fraud, including AI-powered spoofing and face match inconsistencies. And South Africa fraud attempts rose to 21%, mainly due to fraud involving the retiring Green Book. Well, the Chief Executive Officer of Smile ID, Mark Straub, joins me now to unpack the report, the role of partnerships and regulatory frameworks, as well as Smile ID's innovations in combating identity fraud across the continent. Mark, thanks a lot for joining us on the show today. Now, let's start off really with the concept around identity farming and why this is a growing concern for Africa, especially looking at the fintech ecosystem.
Yeah, I think the points that we try to make in the report are that fraud is changing and it's getting more sophisticated. And AI tools make it easier for fraudsters to impersonate other people and ultimately to defraud the financial system or individuals' accounts. And so what we've shared in this report is both our findings and our suggestions on how institutions, particularly banks and payments companies, can protect themselves.
Sure. And talking about the breakdown of your report here, we are seeing a 16% quarterly increase in fraud rate in the year 2024. This is the highest really in about 3 years. Let's talk about the drivers of this surge and which industries are at most risk at this point. And then looking at the conversation around collaboration and partnerships, how do we build a unified defense system against fraud?
What we've seen is that fraud that typically just affected industries that were on the fringe, let's say emerging startups or even shared economy type businesses, has now moved towards the center and is attacking core businesses like banks. And one of the things that we talk about is that both the creation of fraudulent accounts is a behavior we're seeing more of, but also account takeover. Targeted account takeover where individual fraudsters target high-value accounts or potential high-value accounts that they believe to have large sums within them, and then find ways to move that money out of the core banking systems and into other businesses across the continent.
An interesting data you also have around here when we are looking at the regional spread of activities, but we've also seen this dramatic increase in terms of biometric fraud here, particularly in West Africa through spoofing. Now, when we're looking at business strategies for the year 2025, what sort of countermeasures do you expect them to take at this point, especially when we're talking about prioritizing the digital ecosystem?
So the fact that fraudsters are now using more sophisticated technology means that the banks themselves also need to begin investing heavily in technology. We've seen this already from many of Africa's most interesting and most advanced payments companies. We now need to see it from the core banks themselves. And this means adopting things like liveness technology to ensure that when someone presents a selfie, it is in fact the real person and not a deep fake or a generated image. This also means investing in the security of their systems and of their integrations. And there are many suggestions we give on how to do this in our annual fraud report, which we put out last week.
And wrapping up the conversation, let's also take a look at some of the innovations from Smile ID. We have the Smile ID's enhanced smart selfie. Now, let's look at how this works really in terms of countering AI-driven fraud trends like we've seen so far. Look at the numbers, the patterns, the trends around deep fakes. And while we've talked about protection on the regional and continental level, how do we also protect ourselves from international cyber attacks as a whole?
Well, I think that there's got to be collaboration between industry and government and regulators. And the best way to start that process is to create standards that industry can adopt. There are many international examples that we can leverage. There are standards for security of your team and your operations, things like SOC 2 things like ISO 27001. These are, they sound like very arcane things, but they're actually quite important. And they are global best practice for how to make sure that your people, your employees, your devices are secure, that when you offboard team members, you also treat the information securely. And then there are things we can do that are more proactive measures, things like what we talk about, our enhanced smart selfie technology, which is a liveness technology that you can put into your apps, be they banking apps or payment apps. And this liveness technology allows a company to confirm that the person who's taking a selfie is in fact there, that they are physically present, and that they are giving consent to this transaction. More broadly, I would say collaboration, standards, and technology are really the ways to go.
Collaboration, standards, and technology, really, that's the way to go. Thanks a lot, Mark, for your time on the show today. That was the Chief Executive Officer of Smile ID, Mark Straub.